So 4 and 5 are coming together. Buddhir jnanam sammoha Shama satyam dama shamaha Sukham dukkham bhavo bhavo Bhayam cha bhayameva cha Ahimsa samata tushtihi Tapodanam yasho yashaha Bhavanti bhava bhutanam Matta eva prithag vidha. Translation: from me alone arise the varieties of qualities in humans, such as intellect, knowledge, clarity of thought, forgiveness, truthfulness, control over the senses and mind, joy and sorrow, birth and death, fear and courage, non-violence, equanimity, contentment, austerity, charity, fame and infamy. He says, look, when some quality manifests in people to an exceptional extent, it is my power that is enabling it. I am the ability in humans. Consider this intellect of ours. Now, sometimes you realize that this intellect is getting enhanced by somebody. When he wishes someone to succeed in business, he enhances that person's intellect there. So you find that this guy is otherwise quite less intelligent. How come he's got such amazing business acumen? Based on his past sanskars, which he doesn't know, but God knows, God gave the karmic results and enhanced the ability to earn money. Well, likewise, God may want certain changes to happen in the world. You know, when Kripaluji Maharaj's videos first started coming on TV, so I was in charge of his video editing department, and it was a complete mess because there were 3 formats around the world. There was the PAL format, the CCAM format and the NTSC format. And changing from one video format to other was a horrendous thing because the number of frames per second. And that got me wondering that supposing that kind of mess had happened in the computer field, where there were multiple successful operating systems, it would have been so chaotic for the world to interact with each other. Is it possible that God enhanced the brain of Bill Gates to make him succeed in such a big way that Windows became the dominating system worldwide to reduce this kind of confusion. Right? So sometimes God wants things to happen. Like the British may take credit for having conquered the world, but Swami Vivekananda felt that they don't deserve the credit. He said the purpose of the British Empire was only to tie the world in one language. And if you think about it, there's something to it. Someone asked Maharshi Sri Aurobindo, how come once India was at the top and then after that it became the Middle East, Greece, and then moved on from there to Rome and then Portugal, and Portugal disappeared in Spain, and from Spain to France to England and then America. And then back now, then China, and now back to India. So what is all this? He said, Bhagavan ki leela parampar hai. God's plans are inconceivable. He lifts one area, drops the other, etc. So, when He wants something to happen, He gives the intellect. He says, I am the intellect in humans. In Jnana, I am that knowledge that enables you to distinguish spiritual things, spiritual wealth from material wealth, right from wrong. Again, He says, I am asammohan, the freedom from confusion. Do you have that experience of clarity? Some people have it to a tremendous extent, like Einstein did. And he said, if you cannot explain something easily enough, you don't understand it clearly enough. So he was free from a sammohan. Whereas a little mosquito, it went on its first flight around. And when it came back to the parents, they said, how was your first flight? He said, so amazing, wherever I went, people were clapping for me. That was his confusion. The Shree Krishna says, the ability to see clearly comes from me, and the ability to forgive. You know, forgiveness requires so much of spiritual maturity. Forgiveness is one of the most difficult things. People can give up attachment, but they are unable to give up bitterness over the wounds that got created in their hearts. And yet, some people possess this ability. And one of them was Nelson Mandela. Because for a couple of 100 years, a particular class of people had practiced apartheid in South Africa, which was totally irrelevant to the modern world, and they persisted with it. And he was leading the movement against it. They hurt him so badly, they threw him in jail for 27 years. In the harsh South African winters, he would wear a skimpy shirt and half pants. That's all they gave him. And he was made to break lime in the quarry, where his eyes literally got blinded. But he was still free from bitterness. And later on, when it became evident that apartheid would be removed and Nelson Mandela would take over the new state, that country was on the brink of a civil war. Imagine the pent-up hatred in people of all the victimization and discrimination that had been meted out to them. And here was a person completely able to forgive. And he steered the country away from civil war. He was asked on the 60-minute show in the United States, that when you walked out of prison, did you not feel bitter for what they did to you for 27 years? He said, I realized that I will need to throw this away completely to do the work that I am ordained to do by God. So that ability to forgive and move on, which is essential to everyone for spiritual progress, without which you can never progress because you remain pinned down. Sri Krishna says that comes from me. And he also says Satya, the truth. From me comes the truth. Dham, the restraint of the senses. The senses are always hankering for their objects, and yet human beings, somehow or the other, they develop the ability to pull them back. And one such person who had that ability to an astonishing extent was Arjuna. Now Arjuna's foster father was Indra, as we all know. His mother was Kunti. So he went to meet Indra in the celestial abodes. And Indra, he of course spoke to Arjuna, but he thought that Arjuna needs some entertainment at night. So he instructed the most attractive of his apsaras, Urvashi, to go to Arjuna at night. And Urvashi reached Arjuna's chamber and knocked. Arjuna said, Mata, at night you are here? Urvashi was shocked. He had called her mother. She said, I have come to give you joy. He said, impossible. You are the mistress of my father. How can I accept you? He rejected an apsara from Swargalok. How can a human being have that kind of sense control? Sri Krishna says, Arjuna, I empower people like that. But he goes on. Further he says, I am also the restraint. So Dham is the control of the senses. Sham is the control of the mind. When you feel angry, is it better to vent your anger or to subdue it? One person was at the flight counter when all of a sudden the announcement started flashing that the flight has been cancelled. And when he came to check in, the clerk said, I'm sorry sir, the flight has been cancelled. And that sent him into a rage. He said, what a lousy airlines you are. How could this happen to me? I had such a meeting. And he started banging upon the desk, and no matter what the clerk would say, he was not willing to cool down. Behind him was another passenger. That passenger said, sir, I am noticing that you are banging on this for the last 3 minutes, but it's not helping. Why don't you do one thing? You speak to the clerk, I'll bang for you. That annoyed him. He left. And the clerk said, sir, that was a very funny joke of yours. Nevertheless, this guy said, I am so sorry, my flight is cancelled, but I have an important meeting in the evening. Can you please arrange for something else for me? Do I need to go to another airlines, or do you have a contact? They said, sir, we do have the connections. Give me a couple of minutes. I'll see what can be done. And she put him on another flight. So was it better to be angry or to be solution-oriented? This ability to control the mind, Sri Krishna says, it comes from me. And he says, Bhava, I am the perception of the self. What is your perception of the self? Do you have awareness of your defects? Can you take stock of where you are? One monk used to carry a mirror in his luggage. So from time to time he'd pull it out and take a look. And that was very irksome to some of his devotees. And they said, Guruji, you are supposed to be free from bodily consciousness. And why do you from time to time take a look? That's, the college teenagers, they do that. Once one lady came and sat in my pravachan, and she would keep every 2 minutes, she would put her hair like this. Because it was shortcut, so it would come in front and then she'd lift it up. So I said, Deviji, why don't you just tie it up behind? She said, Swamiji, this is a particular hairstyle, it's called flick, so I have to keep flicking it. Now for teenagers, it's all right. It's acceptable, but Guruji, why do you do it? Why do you see yourself in the mirror? Guruji said, whenever there's a difficult situation, I take a look to remind myself that who is the culprit? Where do I need to work upon? I remind myself not to be a part of the problem, but to be a part of the solution. This awareness of the self. Where am I? What are my emotions? What am I doing? Shree Krishna says that is coming from me. And he is also saying the abhav, the experience of death, the fear of death itself. This fear of death is there in everyone, and it is ensuring that we continue to live despite the difficulties. This is called jiveshana, the natural desire to live. If somebody is with miseries, says, how terrible my life has become, if I die it will be better. You go and place your hands on his neck. He will say, what are you doing? Tell him, you said if I die it will be better, I am going to help you. No. I was just saying it out of frustration. I don't want to die. Nobody wants to die. The patient who is on the hospital bed, unable to walk to the restroom, has a bedpan, cannot eat, has a tube going in, the leg is hanging from the roof. That patient also says, Doctor, I hope I will not die. Why this yearning to live? Fear of death. God has made it that way. So you don't chicken out in front of the struggles of life. You continue, bear with the karmas, clear the account, learn the lessons to a better life in the afterlife. So Shree Krishna says that, look Arjun, all these qualities are coming from me. But does that mean that we should not try to cultivate them? Because we heard only by His grace can you know Him. Both are necessary, your efforts and His grace. Tapa prabhavat deva prasadat cha. Your effort and the grace of God. God helps those who help themselves. Napoleon Bonaparte, who was one of the finest generals in Europe, his philosophy was, when you pray, pray as if it depends on God. When you fight, fight as if it depends on you. So that is exactly what Vasish told Ram, Karta Bahir Akarta Antara Vihara Raghava. Ram, externally do your best. Internally remind yourself, it's all God's grace that allows it to happen. So Shree Krishna has started telling Arjun his vibhutis. And how will these vibhutis help us cultivate devotion in our heart? He will soon be telling us, and continue the description of these vibhutis. We look forward to savoring these by His grace and by your effort.